Welcome to the Press Row. I'm Dave Morris alongside Jenny Carlson. Barry Trammell, well, he's off this week, and we're going to get into where Barry is, where in the world Barry Trammell is later in this segment. But I'm going to do my best to fill in the large shoes that Barry leaves behind. Jenny, busy sports world. Usually in the summer, sports kind of dies off a little bit. That hasn't been the case at all.
No, even when we get sort of off-season time, we're in the thick of news. We've got all sorts of stuff to talk about. We got people buzzing about all sorts of stuff in the state of Oklahoma. Let's get to it.
5 and 5, 5 topics in roughly 5 or 50 minutes. And one of the hot topics this week was Sooner football uniforms. Who would have thought we would have seen new uniforms for the Sooners?
I know, and you know what? I don't know if I like them.
Really? You don't like it? Why? It looks too much like Nebraska, the stripe, or?
You know what? I'm a traditionalist, I think. And I like the old uniforms because they're clean, they're sharp.
Classic.
They look good. And I don't really think if it looks good, you should mess with it. I understand why they're doing it, though. They want to try to appeal to recruits, to maybe players that haven't even darkened their doors yet, to say, look, you get a chance to come here. We kind of mix up the uniforms a little bit. I get it. But I don't mind the old look. Just stick with it.
It is a classic look, and I think Barry Trammell did a nice job earlier this week before he went around the world, and we'll get to that in a second, about, hey, you know, it's not like everything. It's just going to be on special occasions.
Right.
But perhaps, you mentioned recruits, this brought in the recruit that we heard about today.
Well, yeah, some news breaking and talking about stuff that has people buzzing. Dorial Green Beckham, the Missouri wide receiver who was kicked off the Tigers football team, is now a Sooner. He has joined the Sooner roster, and we knew that there was some interest going both ways, but it happened really fast. Shows up on campus this morning, looks around. By about 1 o'clock this afternoon, he's on the roster.
What does he bring to the team, outside of perhaps some risk?
Yeah, exactly. There is some risk. He's been had 3 run-ins that ultimately got him dismissed from Missouri, so there is risk there for OU, but if he gets on the field for OU, he's a huge wide receiver physically. He's very talented. Oklahoma was in the mix for him when he came out of high school. One of the top wide receivers, one of the top recruits in the country when he came out. If he gets on the field, it's big for the Sooners, but we'll have to see how quickly that happens.
I kind of like the Sooner uniforms. I was talking with somebody earlier this week. They're like, it's just going to be different to see him in red pants.
Yeah, it's somebody mentioned to me sort of a warrior look, which I hadn't really thought about, but I don't mind it used on a couple occasions. Just don't mess with something that's really good, which is that more traditional uniform they'll wear most of the year.
I'm going to trust her fashion sense better than mine. Moving on to another headline, the Thunder roster and potential free agent signings. You know, the Thunder faithful can get a little restless around here. We need big moves and big names. Well, there's some big names involved here.
Yeah, there are. And you know what? When free agency started, I would have thought a guy like Mike Miller was a likely candidate for the Thunder because he was a guy that they were in the running for a year ago as sort of a reserve shooting guard, a sharpshooter for late in games. He is out there, and I think they've got a good chance to get him. But here's a guy that I didn't think they had a chance to get, Paul Gasol, the big man from the Lakers, you know. And there was even when he announced that the Thunder was one of the teams he was looking at, I thought, there's no way this works. Now the Thunder's considered the front runner for this guy. I know it breaks your heart as a Laker guy.
I'm a big Laker fan. Grew up watching the Lakers, and that was always my team, so I've seen a ton of Paul Gasol play. 2 thoughts on this. First, under D'Antoni, the run and gun, he was not a good fit for that. The Thunder, they're run and gun. They're best when they're athletic and up-tempo. But if you've got Durant and Westbrook in LA talking to Gasol, well, Durant and Westbrook know a lot more about basketball than I do, so apparently they see something they like.
Well, and I think it's interesting, too. You look at the numbers that Paul Gasol had last season, which he averaged a double-double, but and his touches are going to go down. We talked about this on our Thunder Thursday hangout this week. His touches are going to go down when you're playing with Durant, Westbrook, Serge Ibaka.
Sure.
But the defensive pressure he was under a year ago, with Kobe hurt much of the year, with a D-League roster essentially around him, he's going to have a lot more offensive freedom. It would be really interesting to see what he could do.
It'd be very interesting if he went to San Antonio, too. It almost wouldn't be fair, but he'd be a perfect fit for San Antonio.
Yeah, lots of free agents out there. I think it's going to be interesting to see if the Thunder does anything with that starting shooting guard spot. It looks like Thabo Sefolosha is set to go to Atlanta. It looks like a deal is done there, so he is out of the mix. Do they move Andre Robertson into that spot? Do they look at some of the young guys, Jeremy Lamb, or do they go out and acquire somebody? I think it's a big question. We're going to see how they answer it here in the coming days.
The silly season of the NBA. I love it.
I know.
All right. World Cup. Look at that, Tim Howard and the memes of things that Tim Howard could say. Your thoughts on the World Cup and the reaction to the U.S. being eliminated?
Yeah, I think he saved money, he saved he saved the world, he saved kittens out of trees. He was saving everything. An unbelievable performance. And I had actually a soccer guy here in the Metro say that now soccer in America has its heroes, guys that young players can look at and really say, I want to be that guy. Well, Tim Howard is definitely at the top of that list after that performance the other day. And just an unbelievable performance by him. And, really, they were outmatched by Belgium, and yet they're in the game. Unbelievable. And you know what? I think it's just going to set even higher expectations for them and for soccer in the U.S. as we move forward.
Dan Shaughnessy with the Boston Globe just ripped soccer fans, the U.S. team, related him to the Red Sox, who were horrible this year. But I don't know that he's in the majority. I think a lot of people are kind of coming around to soccer.
Yeah, I definitely think it's gaining traction. Now, it's not for everybody. No sport is. I mean, every sport isn't universally loved by all, and that's okay. But I think for a lot of people, they're really taken to soccer. And you know what? With media the way it is now, social media, you can get all sorts of information, the internet the way it is, and now having a chance to see these games from overseas broadcast here, where we can see the best players in the world, we can see the best games in the world, I think it really changes the equation. So I'm excited to see where it goes. I mean, if people are not liking it, okay, sure. But it's legit. It's worldwide, folks. I think it's just going to be part of the culture from here on out.
I grew up a big soccer fan. I'm still a big soccer fan. I don't think soccer needs to make all the changes. More Americans see it. They're like, why is there a running clock? Why is it counting up? Why is this? Well, that's the game, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
You mentioned this weekend and seeing the rest of the games, July 4th. How much fun would that have been for USA, Argentina over 4th of July weekend? Mm-hmm. Which brings us to our next topic here. Favorite summer holiday food?
Oh my gosh, you're asking me to pick from my favorite children, and I'm not real sure I have a good answer.
We could say ice cream, we could say watermelon, we could say hot dogs.
You know what? I think I'm going to go with good old barbecue. Ooh. I love good barbecue, some good pulled pork.
Yeah.
I think set me up with that for the holidays.
There's nothing wrong with that, but this is going to segue nicely into our final topic, and that is, where in the world is Barry Trammell? I mean, look at this.
The food-loving Barry Trammell. That is unbelievable right there.
He's in Venice. We were actually, of course, photoshopped this image, but...
But I wish you hadn't had to, because that would have just been awesome.
Well, trust me, we have more pics from his travels. He is in Italy with his wife, Trish, who works at OU and the School of Engineering, right?
Right.
They have a trip, so they're doing the summer vacation in Italy. And I remember Barry way, way back in the day, a dozen years ago, when I was traveling with him covering sports. He was always like, no, there's no need to go international travel when there's so many places here in the U.S. to visit. And he's right about that. Yeah. But it's cool to see him over there having fun. Yeah,
no, he is having a blast. If you've had a chance to read his blog, it's now essentially Barry's travel blog, which he travel blogs during sports coverage. You know that he blogged during the NBA playoffs. He blogs during college football travel. So he's travel blogging normally, but this is all travel all the time. Italy, his thoughts. You know what? I knew he was going to love going overseas, and here's why. He's a big history guy.
Yeah, you're right.
And in the United States, history is the last couple hundred years.
Yeah.
In Italy, it's thousands of years.
Sure.
It's walking streets that, Cleopatra walked or whoever. I mean, I'm sure I'm going to make something up and really anger somebody, but
right.
I think that's a big part of it.
He eats that up, and speaking of eating, he loves to eat when he goes places. I mean, look at this.
That's typical Barry right there. Seafood pasta. He loves seafood pasta. Talk about favorite food. Seafood pasta is his favorite food. 4th of July, Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter. He'll eat it landlocked. He'll eat it by the ocean, but now he's spending some time by the ocean, and I think he's...
Yeah, you should have some seafood when you're that close. Right. Now, back in the day when I traveled with him, he would have like one meal a day. Like in Kansas City, Garozzo's, he'd have the big plate of Italian food. Is that still the case, or is he...
It kind of depends. I think probably in Italy, if I had to guess, he's eating multiple meals, but if he's not... wherever he is for that one meal is a spectacle. I don't know if there's any Italian viewers out there, but if you could, iPhone video would be much appreciated of Barry and his one meal.
I just picture Barry Trammell singing "O Sole Mio" as he goes down the gondola rides in Venice or whatever. And we tease Barry because he's a great guy. Like in person, he's as genuine as they get.
Yeah.
He clearly knows sports, and he'll be back next week doing a much better job in this segment than I ever dreamed of doing. Jenny, thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Dave.
5 topics, roughly 5 or 50 minutes, whatever. More sports coverage can be found on newsok.com. And I believe you are writing about OU's new football player in tomorrow's edition of the Oklahoman, right?
That's correct. I'll have some thoughts about Dorial Green-Beckham, and obviously our OU coverage team will have all the news about his arrival in Norman.
All right, thank you.